All right, we're looking at lesson 59 today. And then, yes, you do have your corrections after this. I'll go over that whenever, at the end of the 36 weeks when we come back from Christmas break. I'll go over it after Christmas break. We're looking at 3 different things today. The experimental data, then we're going to look at equations with F and D, and then we're going to look at changing into polar form, okay? That's rectangular form. 59. So experimental data, they're going to give you random data points that they get from some random experiments. They're going to graph them and they're going to circle them to show you that they are data points. So if you do an experiment in biology and then you graphed it, this would be what you would have. You're not going to actually have to find the data points. They're just going to go ahead and tell you what the data points are. Yeah. The data points are going to approximate a line, and so you can actually find the slope and the y-intercept to actually get the equation of the line. Whenever you make your equation, do not use x and y. You're going to use whatever they give you. Usually they're going to be elements. So you're going to use the, what is the shorthand? Like nitrogen is N, carbon is C, oxygen is O. What are those called? Like symbols? The symbols, okay. You're going to use the symbols instead of the x and y. So you can write it in x and y, but your final answer shouldn't have x and y. It should have the actual element symbols in it. So that's an example. They look like this in the book. You see how all of them are circled? Okay. I didn't actually circle them, but that's what they look like in the book, okay? So all the dots are data points. And then they give you the line, and you're supposed to find the equation of that line. Does that make sense? You really don't care about these little dots. You only care about the equation of this line, okay? So whenever you go to find the equation, don't use these dots. Are these dots on the actual line? Okay. This line is called a line of best fit. It's like, have y'all heard of that term before? Okay.
Is that like scatter line?
Yeah, it's just like random things, and it's like the line that goes through them, and it approximates them the best. Yeah. Yeah. So we're just right now they're gonna give you the line of best fit, and you just have to find the equation of it. So, is this the origin? What is this by? Okay, so if we go down 5, what would it be? Okay, what are these by? 2.5, so if you go down, is that the origin? On this one it is. Will it always be the origin? Okay, so if it goes through here, don't just assume that it's going through the origin. Because sometimes they'll sometimes do a little, have you ever seen those? They'll do like something like that. Yeah. Sometimes they'll do it, and sometimes they won't tell you that there's a break. They just expect you to like figure that out based off of what they give you. Okay? So sometimes it is the origin, but not always. So how would we find the equation of a line? What? You could. They went ahead and told you 2 points. That's what they did with the little dots. Okay, this is 5, 5. And what is this point? Where did the 10 come from? One, two, three, 4. But why not 4? It's going, yeah. It's going from 5 to 15. That's a 10, not a 4. Does that make sense? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Why is it not 7? These are going by 5s. Does that make sense? So you have to take into account what the actual units are for your graph. Well, are these two the same? Are these grids going by 5 and these going by 5? From here to here is 2.5, and then from there to there is 2.5. Does that make sense? So sometimes they will be the same, usually they won't, okay? So how would we figure out our slope? Do you agree? Does that make sense? Slope formula? These are points. This is my x1, my y1, and my x2, y2. And then you use your that formula. Does that make sense? Any other questions there? Okay, so we've got our slope. What else do we have to find?
We need to find
Y-intercept. So y equals 3.5x plus b. How am I going to figure that out? Should I plug in this one or that one? The smaller one, yeah. So see if you can figure out what your b would actually become. What do you get for your b? Any questions on that? Okay. So our equation would be y equals what? 3.5x. But do we want x and y in our actual final answer?
No.
No. Okay.
What's the U in the R?
Copper. What is copper? Okay. So instead of x, I put in copper. Do I have to write out copper? You can put C. Is that its actual symbol? No. If you know its actual symbol, put it. Copper starts with a C. That's why I use C. Does that make sense? What is the y-axis? Okay, so my y is a B. Is that the actual?
But I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know bronze either. Yeah.
It's like gold is 18, right?
that make sense? So do you have to actually put the symbols? Sometimes I'll tell you what they are. If they tell you, then you can use them. But if you don't know, just use the first letter. Unless they're the same, then don't use the first letter. Because that'd be like C equals 3.5C minus 12.5.
That sounds like C and O.
Yeah, you could do that.
What is it?
Any other questions? Okay, let's look at another one. Do you think you can do it by yourself?
Yes.
Maybe?
I can try.
Okay, try.
So it's not perfectly on a little line. I don't understand. You have the point up there. It's not right on that.
Okay, so Emily says it's never right on a line. So what are you going to have to do? Estimate.
Really? I think it is close to one.
Hmm?
I see one line.
I see one.
Where?
I think this one. 1 and 10.
There's one. Okay. Pick another point. They don't cross exactly, so you got to estimate it. Nope. Nope. Because those...
Okay.
No, that one doesn't work. That's because it would be right along all of them if so. So pick one further up at the top, estimate it.
It's 7 and 45.
45 does cross.
What the?
No, that means I don't near cross. Not 7 and 45. Why don't we do
Okay. Okay, try it. Try it by yourself. You don't ever want to pick 2 points right next to each other in case
The
you...
line that it crossed, like, perpendicular line.
You draw this rule on yourself. Well, she's showing you stuff.
That's what-
No, she's showing you. Up here, it's all shaky. Up your hand.
That's what it'll do.
Yeah, page. Showing off.
Page and go, oh, you.
Y'all done already?
No, I don't get it.
Try and find an equation.
I don't know when it crosses. Oh, hold on. Let me change that. Okay, yes, I'm done. I'm not done.
Okay.
Miss Justice, I forgot what to do on that. Probably the thingy from Friday. I don't know. I didn't get email from Friday. I know.
Are you talking about
Okay. You're talking about the lesson.
Like it squares,
I
and
don't
then you have to buy. I was like,
Do what?
oh, you can't do it. What you call it?
Just change it to a decimal.
my other, I got 6 and 37.
That's wrong. I'm sorry, I have that. No, that's not on a line.
Yes, it is.
Is that on our line? Is that pretty close? At least? 40. And then 6. I thought it was a little less than 6.5, so I said 6.4. Had you said 6.5, would you have been pretty close to my answer?
I thought you
Yeah.
had to cross perfectly. Yeah.
I told you, estimate. You got to estimate on these. They won't always cross perfectly. Does that make sense? sometimes you'll just have to pick points. You'll have to estimate them, figure out what looks closest, estimate if you can't find one that it crosses exactly. You should get something pretty close to 0.18. Yeah. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? You should be pretty close. If you get 0.25 for a slope, that's not really close. Does that make sense? So as long as you're really close on these, that's fine. Yeah, round it to 2 decimal places. Any questions on that part? Okay, when I'm finding my B, which point should I use?
The one that was
What would you get for your B? Oh wait, whoops. Yeah, I did. Wait, no, that's not right. That's not right. Hold on. 1.8 times 10.
1 minus 1.8.
1 minus 1.8, yeah. That. I didn't move my decimal. Negative? That? Do you agree? Did you get something close? If you didn't get that same thing? Close enough? What point did you plug in? Okay. Is 0.75 pretty close to 0.8? Yeah. So what would be the equation that you would write? N equals 0.18s minus 0.8. Does that make sense? If you know sodiums, do you have to use S? Or oh, that is, never mind. Sulfur. Just kidding. I don't know sulfurs either. Is it? Any questions here? Okay. So, equations with fractions and decimals. Have we done ones like this before?
Yes, we have. But just that part.
Kind of, but have they had fractions and decimals?
And just that one's not that hard to figure out, you know? I totally did this already.
So what you want to do, get rid of any fraction and any decimal, and then solve it like you normally would.
What are these called?
Fractions with equations with fractions and decimals. No, you don't have to. I like to. No.
You get rid of decimals, get rid of fractions, and you solve them.
How would you get rid of the decimals? 1 times 100. Okay, so what would be your new equation? Does that make sense? What about your second equation? What would you multiply it by?
10.
Y times 10.
So 10x. No, 5x.
Okay, plus
6y.
Do I need to go over that part again? Which part? 2 times 5 is 10. And then your 10 divided by 2 is 5. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You can do elimination or substitution. Do what? or times 10, whatever will get all your decimals moved away. Yeah, there are 2 decimal places there. There's only 1 here, and then there are 2 there. So you got to move everything by 2. Any other questions on this part? So now, does this look pretty much exactly like what you've done before?
Yes.
So do you want to use elimination or substitution? Which one are y'all eliminating? Okay, does it matter? Okay, you should get the same thing as me. Yeah.
So if you move 4,
And y equals -4. How do you write your answer for these?
4 -4.
It's a point, yeah. Or -4.
Easy.
Do I need to go over anything on that one? So, have we really changed much on these problems? What did we add? Change them to whole numbers, and then you do them just like you always have. Any questions there? Do you have to change them from fractions and decimals? You can work on with the fractions and decimals in there if you want. I don't care. I mean, if you prefer to do it that way, go for it. I just think it's a little bit easier mentally to do it without the fractions and decimals. Any questions here? Okay. Yeah. All right, so this is going to polar form.
Okay, listen, I have trouble with this angle.
Uh-huh. What form is this? No. Rectangular. What does polar look like? That's polar form. So what we did Thursday was going from polar to rectangular.
I have trouble with these.
Okay. So now we're going to be going the other direction. So you're going to have to use Pythagorean theorem. What is Pythagorean theorem? And we're going to use inverse tangent. How do you find inverse tangent on your calculator?
No, it's the tangent -1.
Yes, tangent to the -1. All right, how would you graph that? Do you agree with Miranda? Does that make sense?
How do you know which?
Left 5, down 3. So what we are looking for, 2 things. The angle, yeah. And what else? The hypotenuse. We got to find those 2. Which one are you going to use Pythagorean theorem for? Okay, so see if you can figure out your hypotenuse. I don't know.
Like, I can get that, but then I don't know what to do. Okay, so.
Usually, if it's like that, they'll leave it as a square root of 34. If you find it as a decimal, that's fine. You can write it as 5 point whatever. 5.9 or 5.8, whatever it is. Does that make sense? But leaving it as a square root of 34 is fine. So we've got our hypotenuse. Now we have to find our little angle. We're going to use tangent. What is the tangent of the angle? opposite over adjacent. Does that make sense? Do y'all see how that works? Okay, so to figure out the angle, we're going to have to do tangent inverse of what? So what do you get for your angle? Do you agree?
We just round it up to 30.
No, they want you to leave them as decimals.
Okay.
I don't know.
What are you going to zero from?
That's an angle. That's what I labeled my angle. Theta. It's a Greek letter. Greek letter. That's what they use for angles most of the time.
Yeah, they have that on Facebook.
Yeah. Does that make sense so far? Okay, so what is our distance from the origin? At what angle?
30.
It's not 30.96. Where do you start the angle? You start it over here. Does that make sense? Always start from the positive x-axis. We go this way. How much is that green? 180. And then we have to do what? Does that make sense? That's your actual answer. Which one?
I don't get where you're getting to.
You have to start over here, the angle. And so this is 90, and that's 180. And then you go another 30.96. So you went 180, and then you have to add 30.96 to get to that line. Okay. Any questions here? You won't always add 180 to your angle. It'll depend on where it is. Okay? So I'm going to do a couple examples real quick. Going over that part. If this is 45 degrees, 5 at what? Does that make sense? Because you start here, and whoop, after 45 degrees you're there. Does that make sense? Okay? If we are here, and let's say this is 30 degrees. Yeah, you're going to go 90, and then how much more? How much is here? Yeah. So how much is going to here? $150. Because going all the way to this line is 180, right? But how much short were we? We're trying to get here. That's the line that we have, the vector. That make sense? Okay, let's look at another one. Why would it be 220? You're going to go 180, and then you got to keep going to get there. You see how that works? Okay. I just made it up, yeah. What would that one be? Why 300? Going all the way there is a 360 degree rotation. Does that make sense? But how much short were we? 60, so 360 minus 60. Does that make sense? So that's the basics of how you get the angle. So different for every quadrant. So you can't always just add 180 or do whatever. You have to look at each individual problem. Does that make sense? Any questions on going from rectangular to polar? Do you understand how to get the distance of the hypotenuse? That part's Easier? The angle part's the harder part? Okay. Any questions on angles? Okay. Go ahead and clear your desk for your test corrections.